Greetings, and welcome to The Thirsty Mage, the podcast where a group of friends get together to have a beer and discuss their favorite RPGs. I am your host, David Lloyd, and with me this evening is Talk Nintendo podcast host and Morse Bench alter ego, Mr. Casey Gibson.
Well, I'm still nursing that hangover from the previous Jeopardy episode, so I got to stay hydrated.
That's right. And also with us tonight, RPG veteran and reliable source for positive Final Fantasy reinforcement, Mr. Jordan Rudick.
I love that positive Final Fantasy reinforcement. It sounds like something you'd learn at a cult or something like that, you know?
I'm pretty sure it is something you learn at a cult.
Yeah. David's turning the mage into a Final Fantasy 1 cult.
That's right. Yeah. Whenever someone starts badmouthing Final Fantasy, I just have to put out the call to Jordan. Back me up!
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know if I'm fully into the cult thing, but I'm definitely on the positive Final Fantasy train.
And rounding out the panel, Black Mage Conservationist, and tonight's Ying to our Yang, Mr. Neil Runaghan.
Yeah, so about that positive Final Fantasy reinforcement, y'all might need it.
Well, that's why we got Jordan.
Yep. I don't know if I have enough to balance out Neil.
I think it's just my fury happened to be in the Slack chat. I've leveled out a little bit, but I still don't have as many kind words to say about Final Fantasy IX as I expected.
Well, before we get too deep into the talk, how about we go over what everyone's having at the pub tonight?
Wait. What was that? Can anybody guess? Besides getting a little bit on my screen, I'm having a soda. It's my own turbo mode for this podcast. Hopefully it will be less clumsy to access while you're playing the video game, and actually maybe this turbo mode Coca-Cola that I'm drinking will also not just seem like a band-aid that some like two interns at Square Enix decided maybe we can do this just for the hell of it, and instead of people actually putting effort into a port.
Neil, ruining the drink part of the segment is my shtick, okay? You stick to the script here. So I'm just having some water right now, filling in with Casey here. But I did have a Bellini an hour and a half ago, so I'm going to count that as part of my mage drink today.
Yeah, that was pre-gaming.
Pre-gamed, yeah.
Pre-game. I did. I was pre-drinking. Not that I would need it, but I wanted something festive, and so I had myself a Bellini. I like that. Anything that's slushy and sweet and alcoholic, put my name on that.
Mm. Oh, like a strawberry daiquiri?
Let's do. Oh man, yeah, let's do it.
We could have an appletini thing if we're into the Scrubs persuasion.
Let's go. Let's go.
You know, it's really good. You get the strawberry daiquiri and the pina colada. Make that Miami Vice. Ooh, that's my vacation drink.
That's a good one.
When I go to Vegas, you go to Fat Tuesdays in Vegas, and you get those huge yardstick cups. With
it seems unnecessary,
hurricanes
but it's great.
Blue Hawaiian. Oh, it's totally unnecessary, but it's awesome.
Well, someone's got to put the bartender's kids through college, so I have a beer, and it was purely chosen based on cosmetics. I saw it was a picture of a warrior-looking guy raising a sword about to slash 3 demons, and it's called McTavish beer, and it's called Legendary Ale. It's an American pale ale from the brewery of Les Trous du Diable. It's another French brewery.
I like that, Du Diable.
In
Du Diable.
Shawinigan.
If I was having a beer, it would probably be Fokelbanger from the Alchemist Brewery, which is in Vermont, and it's only available in that area. They're very well renowned for Heady Topper. It's absolutely wonderful, very hoppy beers. That when I had first heard about them, they were like in a much smaller space, and now they have a really cool like tasting space. You can go there, get some free samples, and go out and buy some cans of beer and get on your way.
Love them free samples.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, how about we get into her? It's what we're talking about tonight is Final Fantasy IX, just released on Switch. Was it a little over a week ago now? I guess Shadow dropped during the direct.
February 13th.
Yeah.
Oh man, has it been that long?
Or
Yeah.
2.5 weeks, I guess.
That feels a long time ago.
It really does.
It was
Time flies.
25 hours of Final Fantasy IX ago for me.
Yeah, well, I did not finish. I'm still working my way through. I believe I'd be just shy of halfway through the third disc. So I still got a little ways to go, but I think I'm at like 13 hours. But I have been using the turbo function not quite as liberally as Jordan had, or did, I should say. But I've been using it especially for those nice slow battles.
Before we get too deep into what's new in the port, I'll just go over a little bit of history of the Final Fantasy, the original that released back in 2000. So Final Fantasy IX began in the summer of '98. It was near the end of the development for Final Fantasy VIII. So Final Fantasy, as we all remember, was going through some big changes. 7 and 8 bucked the trend for the Final Fantasy franchise, and they gave up their medieval look to go with a modern setting. A steampunk style, if you will, I guess. And Sakaguchi was brought back in to develop the new story for Final Fantasy IX, and so he was going back to the medieval European roots from his original games, and created essentially the kind of world, and the costumes and characters were all centered around the English. I think it's a Georgian period, is the way it's pronounced, during the reign of King Georges. During the 18th and 19th centuries. At the time, they actually were working on like the future of Final Fantasy, because this was the final game that was on the PlayStation 1. Final Fantasy X for PlayStation 2 had been announced shortly before the release, as was the Final Fantasy XI MMO. So all three were in development around 99 at the same time. So
we need to get 9 out of the door.
Yeah, that's right.
It's baffling how many Final Fantasies they cranked out in this period, because if you think about it, so what, 6 came out in 94, right? And then you had 7, 8, 9 essentially came out 97, 98, 99.
While they're working on Chrono Trigger as well.
Yeah, well, Chrono Trigger would have been done. I think Chrono Trigger's team, at least the Square side, went on to work on Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
After that was done. I think
thing,
Chrono Trigger's 95 is when that was out. And then, but yeah, they basically 7, 8, 9, three giant PlayStation 1 3D RPGs all essentially came out in like a 3-4 year span.
Yeah. And Sakaguchi must have been a busy man then, because he was in the development of all three. Like the MMO was actually was his push. He thought that's where the future of the franchise was going.
Yeah, and then 10 came out in 2001.
Yep.
They were doing the movie. And I think this might be part of the reason why stuff like the movie might have blown up, because I think Sakaguchi was really pressed thin. There's also all the stuff where I think that's when Sakaguchi, I think the production company for the movie was in Hawaii. And I think that might have been where Square Enix USA was, or Square USA.
Yeah, well, and even part of the development of 9 was done in Hawaii.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought that was the case as well. Like, it's just like really Final Fantasy still, I don't think the teams were that ridiculously big, but they did a lot in a very quick amount of time. I can imagine that they were probably all working Rockstar like hours to make these games.
Imagine. The crunch. And for anyone not totally in tune with the Final Fantasy franchise, so Hironobu Sakaguchi was the original creator of Final Fantasy. Had worked on all of them up until that point. So Final Fantasy IX was kind of meant as a swan song for everything that came before it. He wrote and came up with the setting for Final Fantasy IX. Ton of references to old Final Fantasies that we'll get into later in the episode. And then the only other, I won't get too into who built it, because I'm pretty sure we went over some of the developers back in October when we had our Final Fantasy episode. But the other name to note is Hiroyuki Ito, who was the director on Final Fantasy IX. So he was, again, involved in every Final Fantasy up until that point as well. He did different jobs on each one. He was the co-director on Final Fantasy VI with Katase, and worked, like I said, he was doing like battle design and different things. Worked on Chrono Trigger as well, and this was his second go as director, or the first time he was on his own, but his second time in that role.
Yeah, and we'll probably talk about more. I mean, well, I guess you might have covered him on the other show, but because he also was the guy who came in for, God, I'm blanking on the dude's name, Final Fantasy 12, that then got bumped off. But anyway, Ito was the guy who came in to basically save Final Fantasy 12, because it was, I'm gonna find his name, Yasumi Matsuno, who's the Final Fantasy Tactics guy, started doing work on Final Fantasy 12, and then I think due to health issues, and I think the game was also taking a very long time to come out, he wound up stepping down from it, and then Ito took over and then kind of brought that home. And then since then, Ito's basically just been working on re-releases, and it seems like he's in a supervisory, producery role on a lot of Square stuff. I forget what his exact title is now, but he's pretty high up the chain at this point.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely a veteran. He's been there since the beginning, so...
Yeah.
Developer that anyone wants to touch on before I was thinking what we would do is maybe start with the bad stuff about this.
So the port's bad.
Take it away, Neil.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you guys played a lot more of the game because you put up with the bullshit in this game, or not this game, in this port. So, as far as I know, with the history of this Final Fantasy IX remastered thing, it did start off as a mobile and PC version, I think, initially.
Yeah.
Anybody correct me if I'm wrong.
Mobile specifically.
Okay, so mobile specifically, and then came out, I think it came to PC, and then PS4, and then it came to Switch and Xbox One on February 13th, 2019. It followed the Final Fantasy VII port, which first debuted on PS4, which is the version that we're going to be talking about when we reconvene here in probably about a month's time. I played a good chunk of that Final Fantasy VII port, and found it to be really fun and playable. My issues with the Final Fantasy IX port here is that they didn't really change that much about the game, which would normally be a good thing, except for this is from the era where load times on the PlayStation 1 were basically the norm, and there were drawn-out cutscenes and long summons and stuff like that. They do try to throw in a Band-Aid for it, so they have, there's the 4 toggles that you can do on, there's like the... heal everybody, do...
Well, there's like max, it's max... So
max health, I think max damage...
Sort of.
Turbo.
Like, the HP thing is weird, because the way it works is that you don't take... Like, you can take the damage, but then you're just back to max. So, if you actually take a hit that's bigger than your existing HP, you die. But
That's such a stupid option.
But any hit less than that doesn't reduce your HP. So if you have like
to cheese the game too hard.
Yeah, it's really weird, because if you have 1,000 HP and you get hit with 900, you're still at 1,000. Nothing changes. But if you get a hit with 1,100, you're dead, and you have to use a Phoenix down to bring it back to life. So it's it's really weird.
I think one of them's the trance one, right? Where it fills up your trance meter automatically and you stay tranced or something?
Yeah, that's it.
That's pointless too, though, because every hit... So what it does is it gives you full trance, but then it makes every hit 10,000. So you don't even need the trance anymore.
Yeah.
Well, they knew trance is stupid anyway, so...
Yeah, it's
I mean,
horrible,
trance is kind of dumb. But I guess the pièce de résistance of all these things is turbo mode, which just makes everything go super quick in an almost humorous fashion. So the thing with this is Jordan, I have no idea how you were able to play. Oh, you can also turn off random encounters.
Yeah, those are the 4 toggles.
I mean, the random encounter one is almost as important. At least I found it almost as important as the turbo mode. But I guess I think they work well in conjunction. Yeah.
I think maybe my thing is that I found turbo mode to be very unenjoyable to play the game as, because it was moving too fast.
Yeah, and
it was also cumbersome to I would want to do turbo mode for some things and then slow it down. So I'd do a lot of going back and forth toggling, which involves going to a pause menu, going to select something, and then pausing out. Which it's like in Link's Awakening, where you it's doable to do that, but it's not ideal to like go and switch your sword shield and the Rock's Feather in Link's Awakening.
Yeah, so I played about 90% of the game in turbo mode, I would say. And just a quick comparison to FF12. On the PlayStation 4 controller for FF12, it's a single button. I think it's like R2 or L2 to turn turbo mode on and off, or to increase the game speed. And I wish they had done that here.
Yep.
Because I think that would have made a ton of sense, right? Single button, not hitting 3 buttons, including pausing in and out, because you can't even pause the game at every point, right? There are certain sections where that option is turned off. But I did have some of the cumbersome problems, and I actually found it really comical to be running around some of the areas. Like I've really treating it in a very lighthearted, like just kind of running through it as fast as I could kind of thing. And I certainly wasn't stopping to smell the roses everywhere and doing all the side stuff. I missed a bunch of stuff, but I was okay with that. I just wanted to get through it. And I really enjoyed the turbo mode for grinding when I needed to. So I would turn off random encounters at a new area, usually just outside of a town, and then I'd turn on turbo mode and just run around and gain like 3 or 4 levels. One of the funny things about the game is that if you're playing through the story and you're getting to new places, the experience you get is really high. Like you don't have to grind a lot in this game. You grind kind of more strategically, like in certain spots where you're fighting newer or more challenging enemies. And if you're right outside of town, you can call Ma or call a Moogle to use a tent at any point. The stupid thing about the tents, though, they don't even heal you up fully. Like, what gives with that? Like, there's no cottages, there's no houses. It's only tents, and so the one thing you can buy to rest in, it doesn't heal you full. I'm like, that's some BS for sure. But
yeah.
I
was gonna say, how many times did you switch screens and then just go immediately right back to the other screen by accident in turbo mode? Like I'd miss, I'd miss a set of stairs and be like run straight back to where I came. Like but yeah, for turbo mode, I tried to keep it limited to just when I was sort of traveling big areas, or like if I was like, all right, I've already been in this city and now I'm just sort of like the one quest that you need to get the 3 different potions for Sid. That was like, okay, I'm just going to flip on turbo mode. Like, I don't need to see this city I've, already explored a whole bunch already. But yeah, when it came to story bits and that kind of stuff, I tried to turn it off. And like Neil said, it does definitely get annoying to like hit the R button or whatever it is, then start again. But,
it's especially...
But man, it definitely helps so much with battles. The battle is like, to get into a battle takes so long, even with the turbo on.
Yeah, like the load times are like, as a game on PlayStation 1, and like a bunch of us are going to be playing Xenogears, and we're playing the PlayStation 1 classic version on like Vitas and PS3s and stuff. Like, that's a little more excusable because that's just literally like a game from 1998 that we're playing the older version of. But Final Fantasy IX is a new remastered version in HD. It's inexcusable to have load times like this game does. Like the first couple battles that I got into, I thought the game crashed because there was such a delay between like having the you got into a battle and then it's a black screen and then you go into the battle, which is okay for a game on a disc system in the year 1999. It's not as okay, or I guess 2000, I guess would have been, right? This was early
2000. Yeah.
Like, that's okay, but it's not so much okay now, especially when it's a remastered version. And there's a slowness that kind of pervades a lot of this game that I don't think the turbo mode and the implementation of it really fixes. And like, it sucks because if it just has that thing where, like in Final Fantasy 12 or my recent thing is playing Mario & Luigi's Bowser's Inside Story on 3DS. That has the ability, you just like hold down the R button and it just like speeds up text and stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's really nice.
Which like those, like, all you needed was that. And I still would probably lament some of the issues with the port, but that would go such a long way to making my experience with this game a lot better. Because even as I might have led on to talking to you guys before the show, like, I don't hate this game. I'm frustrated by it. Like, I wish I liked it more. I wish I enjoyed myself more. But mostly it stems from this crappy port. And also I think Zidane's a crappy character, and I think his third act
He's a
redemption,
ladies' man, bro.
His third act redemption is totally like it. I know, David, you had mentioned earlier when we were talking about how, like, there isn't any single moment. He just slowly gets better over the course of the game. And I think it's just that they stopped writing him as much of a jackass as the game got deeper. And, like, that's the only difference. I don't feel like a lot of his arc is that earned.
Yeah, you can solely blame Ito for that because in an interview afterwards, he made it clear that was his call. That Sakaguchi had not written him that way at all, and that he had gone in and said, no, we have to do this, and convinced him that that's what needed to be done. And I think what they were trying to do was give him a person, like some kind of personality, something that stood out. But there's so many better things.
I feel like they might have gotten knocked for Cloud and Squall maybe being a little more milquetoast protagonists, even though I don't know if I'd like. I can see that because I think Cloud and Squall have a little bit more of like the silent protagonist in them in some respects, but I don't really think they're bad protagonists.
No, well, Squall starts off that way and opens up as the game goes on.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where some of that came in. But that even his character development I thought was more natural than Zidane. It was just kind of out of nowhere that, like, Zidane's this great guy. All of a sudden, it's like, well, he's doing good things, but even when he was doing good things, he was still a dick.
Yeah, it's like a lot of his actions, especially in the first act. And I stopped near the end of disc 2. I think I was in like Ifa Village or whatever it's
the tree area.
Yeah, or like that tree. That confrontation with Kuja there is about when I petered out. But like in that early goings, like I don't feel like my actions in the game are what that character would do in that moment. And I guess like they're trying to be like, oh, there's the meet cute with him and Garnet. Like, sure, whatever. I don't believe that his intentions are pure.
Not until mid-disc 3, apparently.
But it sucks because I think like all the other characters are kind of great. Like Vivi is probably one of the best Final Fantasy characters ever. Steiner, I found pretty, like he's a little like silly, but I think they deepen him a little bit over the course of the story.
I
like Garnet,
he's a little over the top, but
even even Freya feels like a better version of Zidane in some ways. It just Zidane sucks so much. All the other characters are generally good.
Oh, before we get too deep into the story, one other thing to point out with the port. Visually, there was some changes because the characters were made into high def or higher def than the original.
The backgrounds aren't.
Yeah, so they didn't put as much effort into the background, but I mean, it is noticeable that the characters do have more definition and they're a little less polygonal.
I think it's a little jarring, the contrast, but it's not like detracting. It's just weird. It is detracting in the final scenes.
Okay. Because there's in the final, there's this final thing. I don't want to go too into it because in case people haven't played it before, but there's this final kind of movie that's playing at the very end where there's a lot of action going on. So it's not the static background that you usually see with the characters. It's a moving picture background, and they have this high def Zidane jumping all over the place. And it looks so awful. It looks so awful. Like he's jumping all over the place, and you're like, "What is he standing on?" Like it looks like he's just on the screen. Like it's not corresponding well. I think maybe when it was less high def, maybe it blended in more with the movie in the background. But the movie in the background is like the old style. So it's just an even worse contrast. And when everything's moving in the background, it's just. It's like jarring is probably the best way to put it. I mean, it's not a long scene. It was just a noticeable one, I guess, would be it was kind of like this is the end of the game. And if you didn't think this was a little odd, here's like one last kick in the nuts, of this just not being great. Sticking on the visual theme, the menu and the text is different, and I'm fairly certain that's because of the mobile. Like it's easy to tell that the text and the menu system was changed to be optimized for mobile, because they use mobile friendly font face now, and it's more pronounced. There's like, again, the contrast. It's more contrast with the background. Whereas in the original game, the menu system was kind of more blended in with like it looked more part of the environment. And then the final thing, which is actually the most complaints that I heard about, at least on Twitter, is the music bug. That each time during a battle, the music restarts. And I didn't notice it right away, but there was kind of a glass shattering when it was brought to my attention. Where
then
it's
you
like,
couldn't unnotice it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, there's just, I mean, little things like that that's disappointing. It's especially when you see, I know it's much more labor intensive, but when you look at like the older games and to see how much of improvement they got when they were ported, to see like the original compared to the new, it seems like there was a light year jump that hasn't come to the PlayStation 1 versions, and I'm guessing that it's just based purely on like they don't want to put the money or the create like the mind, the capital towards
to
it.
just re-release it and sort of dust their hands, you know.
Yeah, like people are going to buy it regardless, so it's the cost benefit of, okay, we're losing some people because, you know, the port's not great, but the people we're losing aren't worth the money that we'd have to invest. Like that's an assumption on my part.
I mean, Final Fantasy IX was at the top of the eShop charts for weeks. It might even still be at or near the top right now.
Yeah.
It was whatever if they dropped 9 or 7 on the Shadow drop, it was brilliant. It didn't matter which one. That one was going to sell all the way up until the next one comes out. So
and that's probably why they went with 9.
Yeah, I think so too, because Yeah, 7 is obviously the more popular one. I want to say one more positive thing about the ports, and that's that I was playing about halfway through FF9 when we did the Final Fantasy recap series, that thing in October on the Mage, and I wasn't really digging it. But playing through this one, I definitely have a more favorable impression of the game, and I don't even think it has anything to do with the quality of the game. I think it's just me being able to access it in a different way. The fact that I can turn off random encounters, which I hate in role-playing games, the fact that I can speed up the cinematic battles and the other stupid shit that I don't care about, like I was able to customize the experience to fit my lifestyle. And that to me has so much value these days. Like I'm a father of a 1.5-year-old, like my schedule revolves around him. We've got another baby on the way, so wife is
cool.
Congrats.
Congrats.
First announcement to some of my NWR fellows here. So we've got a baby coming in July. I need more games that let me play them the way I want to play them and skip things I want to skip and avoid things I want to avoid. And so I really appreciate that the port let me do that. Is it a good port? Hell no. But it had two features that I want in every damn port. Let me speed up things I don't want. And if I don't want to do random battles, like I want to actually explore a dungeon and find treasures and stuff at my leisure, let me do that. If I want to get lost and like kind of make my way around, let me do that at some ridiculous speed, like 4 times speed, 10 times speed, whatever, so that I'm not wasting an hour in a dungeon. I'm wasting 5 or 10 minutes, the 5 or 10 minutes I can actually spare on it. So, yeah, I mean, I know that the port is not great. We want to see more from them, but I will be happy in the future if they just include a turbo button and a turn off random encounters button.
And I think if I had a little more nostalgia for this game, like I played through it once, I was trying to deduce exactly when. I think it was about 2002 or 2003. And I enjoyed it, but I never revisited it. The closest I ever got to revisiting it is by playing the Final Fantasy IX story sequences in Theater Rhythm, which highly recommend everybody play that game. It's like one of the best 3DS games ever made, especially if you like Final Fantasy music. But yeah, like this game kind of fell flat for me, playing it again, and I'm a little nervous about like playing Final Fantasy VII in a couple weeks, because that might fall flat for me as well. But I don't know.
No way, man. 7. Woo, baby.
It's got Casey's seal, 100% guarantee. You're going to enjoy FF7.
Yeah. Let me,
Casey told me. I'm going to hold you to it.
You're going to enjoy it and you're going to like it.
Yeah.
I want Casey to film an infomercial where he's selling FF7. Just like you're selling the knives or like the turbo roaster or whatever the hell it was,
Do it, yeah. Maybe I'll whip something up.
And if you don't fall in love with this game, I'm going to throw in 5 other Final Fantasies.
Don't
and,
worry, Final Fantasy
that's
9
not
on
all.
the house.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, speaking of nostalgia, how about Jordan? Jordan has a fun little game that we can play before we get into some more thorough talk about the story and the characters.
Oh, this is going to be good. Yeah.
So Final Fantasy 9, like I said, this is kind of Sakaguchi's love letter to the Final Fantasy that came before it. Specifically, the original Final Fantasy. I think there's a lot of Easter eggs and references that are built into Final Fantasy 9, and based on my list, it seems like the original Final Fantasy received the most references. And so Jordan and I each wrote down everything that we could find, and he's going to give me a little quiz to see if I was able to catch everything.
So about half of these are ones that I found on my own, and the other half are ones I was looking up online. And I'm curious to see, David, how many of these you come up with. So I've collected here 13 Final Fantasy 1 references in Final Fantasy 9. So I've got my list ready to go, David, and I'm curious, what's one reference to the original Final Fantasy that you found in Final Fantasy 9?
Okay. Well, I'll start with the characters. I feel like each of the original characters had a corresponding character in Final Fantasy 9.
Vivi is the black mage.
Yeah, that's the obvious one. Garnet is obviously the white mage, especially when you look at like the white robe that she was wearing at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Zidane,
So I've got those
thief.
too.
Yep. Zidane is the thief. Freya looked like the red mage to me. Even though I think there was more.
She's more like a dragoon, though, right? Like
it's more like a dragoon. Yeah. But it was more the aesthetic of Freya because she had that kind of red cloak there. I felt like Aramont was pretty close to what the black belt was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Steiner would obviously be the fighter.
Yeah. So what I wrote down 2 of those. I think you're absolutely right about those. I wrote down specifically just based on the appearance. Vivi obviously is the black mage. I have Dagger's robe. When you first meet her, it's very much the white mage robe, if you remember, right? It's the white cloak with the red kind of stripes on it. She doesn't wear that throughout the game. I think she wears it one more time when she's hiding, or she wears it at least at the beginning part of the game. Do you? Okay, well, I'll do one more related to characters. Do you remember? My hint would be something about after you leave the evil forest. Do you remember anything about the characters after you leave the evil forest early in the game?
Like right after when Blank becomes a stone, I guess.
So right after Blank becomes a stone, and they're going to go and cure him, and you're walking out of the forest and you're going to the next location. Do you remember anything about the characters or your team at that point?
Not Final Fantasy 1. Like I wrote something down. There was it was around that time. The note I had for that was that the Tantalus band was playing a Final Fantasy VII song.
Okay.
But I'm not sure about the Final Fantasy 1.
So this is, if you remember the marketing and a lot of the maybe demos or screenshots of Final Fantasy 1, do you remember what the original or the typical party makeup was? The 4 characters. Who would it be? Final Fantasy 1.
I imagine it was black, white, fighter,
and
the thief, I guess.
Right, and who is in your party when you leave?
Oh, Vivi, Garnet,
Forest?
Zidane, and Steiner.
Right, so it's the warrior, thief, black mage, and white mage. So when you leave the evil forest, you have that prototypical. It's the first time I believe you're fighting with 4, at least your 4 party members who are going to be with you throughout the game.
Yeah.
And you're the original Final Fantasy 1 kind of prototypical party there. So that was another cool one related to the characters. Okay, so those are kind of the only ones I have related to characters. So let's at least character classes and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's another one that you? You found?
Garland as the one of the antagonists.
Yeah, that was the next one on my list too.
Yeah, that's one that with Garland, I thought there were more overt references to Final Fantasy 1 than just the name. And I think I just had that kind of mistaken in my head when I was younger. And looking into it, it's just like, no, it's just the name.
It's just the
Yeah,
name.
it's just the name, yeah.
And the fact that he's a villain. I do, like, Garland does make me, it reminds me of one of my favorite things about Final Fantasy 1, which is the twist with Garland.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of in terms of Garland is that it's not Garland who's the main villain in FF9, although it seems like he could be. It's Kuja. But what happens in Final Fantasy 1 is Garland, you see him at the beginning of the game and you beat him quite handily, like he's not that important, but he comes back later as Chaos, right? And he's super powerful. So there's something about maybe a deception with Garland that you don't he might be not as important as he seems or stronger than he seems. Just something about it kind of misleads you, or meeting him, you're not exactly sure who he's going to be. So there's a little bit of deception in both games in terms of Garland, or kind of fighting him and stuff like that. So yeah, Garland was the next one I had. What else?
The world map of Gaia is closely resembled over like the Final Fantasy 1 map and the map of Gaia is very closely resemble each other.
Yeah, I have that. Now I've looked at the images side by side, and I think it's I do think it's one of the looser references. I can see it, but I feel like I have to be told that first, and then I kind of I can see it now. Like I think it's hard to realize that at first, but if you do look at the map side by side, there is a kind of loose 4-continent kind of structure to them with water in the middle of the 4 continents, and so yeah, the map layout is definitely a callback reference to the first game.
Yeah, and then we got the rat tail in the auction house.
Very good, yeah. So rat tail, part of a quest line to help you get the Excalibur sword for Steiner, and Bahamut gives you give that to Bahamut in Final Fantasy 1 as proof of your courage, and then you get to class up to the adult or the mature, stronger classes there. Good, yep. What's the next one?
You're not counting Sid as a reference, are you?
So.
Sid is a forever reference.
Yeah, so I didn't count it. And
so
Sid isn't really in Final Fantasy 1, right? Like,
is it 2 when the Sid is a character?
Yes. Final Fantasy 2, Sid becomes a person in the game, person in the world. However,
the factually worst Final Fantasy, by the way.
that's right. Although we're going to get to that soon, I think.
Although, I mean, there is a reference to Sid from Final Fantasy, though, because the strange potion that you put together, if you read the notes, it references back to the Book of Matoya.
Very good. That's the one I was hoping you'd get to. So yeah, so Sid, when you're trying to cure him of his, I guess it becomes a frog, right? And you're trying to cure him of the frog disease.
Is
he still?
He's an Oglop. He's an Oglop, I think.
Oh,
that
right.
Yes.
Potion turns into a frog, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Book of Matoya, and Matoya is the witch or sorceress in Final Fantasy 1 who helps you cure the elf prince. So it's kind of a neat little callback to curing a prince or curing someone important with some kind of potion or something. So that's a neat one. Yep. What else you got?
So Mount Gulag uses the same music as Mount Gulg which is the fire dungeon from Final Fantasy 1.
That's right. So the music is it's a remix. It's you can definitely hear it there for sure. The NES name of that volcano, I had to look it up. It's Gurgu Volcano. So they changed the name a little bit in the to Mount Gulg and then Mount Gulag in FF9. But so that's 8 so far we've got. I've got a few more for you. What else?
And the four crystals that are split between Garnet and Eco to call Alexander.
Okay, so
that's a reference.
Definitely is, and I didn't have that on my list. I'd forgotten about that. So
really?
That makes I'll add that as number 14. Yep. Four. I was thinking about something about 4 crystals, but I couldn't piece it together in my head. So you have the 4 crystals that you have to return the shine to in Final Fantasy 1, and we see that in FF9 as well. So
the next one I got is the Guardians of Terra, or the 4 fiends from the first Final Fantasy.
Fantastic. So this is a 2-parter. So I give you a half point for that. So the 4 elemental fiends of earth, fire, water, and wind. What's funny is that I think 2 of them have the same names. So Kraken is still Kraken, I believe, and Tiamat is still Tiamat. The fire one is not Carrie like it is in FF1. And Lich is different as well.
Was it different in FF9?
It's not Lich. It's a longer name, I think.
Okay. I thought I saw Lich.
So that's
what the hell are their names in FF9?
Yeah,
well, like you said,
can't remember
the
first
Kraken
two.
is the Kraken. It's
Kraken
definitely
and Tiamat
Kraken
are
and
the same.
Tiamat. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're definitely the same. I thought it was like something like Medusa or something in the F9.
Yeah, it's something weird.
Something
Although
different,
it reminds you that looking at it, it looks just like the same one. But
Yep.
yeah,
Exactly.
so that's the half part. Now I want you to think of the very end of the game, and I want you to make there's something that happens in FF1 and the exact same thing happens in FF9. Thinking about the second time when you fight these, I'm giving away too much. The second time when you fight the Four Fiends. I found it jarring in FF9 when it happened.
The only thing that stands out to me is when who was the first the first fiend that I beat. After he died, he hit me with this ridiculously overpowered thing that killed everyone but Zidane.
Yeah. Nope, that's not it. It's if you remember where you encounter them, they're not just standing somewhere. You don't see them on the map. The battle just starts. However,
they're almost like a random.
It's almost, but it's
almost
the exact same spot every time. And in Final Fantasy 1, when you fight the Four Fiends again in the Temple of Chaos, they are in the exact same square, the exact same part of the map every time you fight them. So it's not a random encounter. It's a fixed encounter the second time you fight them, just like it is in Final Fantasy 1.
Okay.
So so they kind of really went really hard into that reference, I think. Yeah.
I think
a couple more.
I think I only have one more left myself. That's Princess Cornelia in the play is named after the city in Final Fantasy 1.
Good. Yep. Yep. I've got that one as well.
I knew that was familiar.
Yeah. Or as purists of Final Fantasy 1, Corneria.
Yeah.
And then okay, so
yeah, that's all
you've got, David.
Final Fantasy.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. So I'll start at the top and see which ones. Garland, we got Rat Tail, we got Matoya, we got Neil or Casey. Do you guys have any others that you noticed or?
Not that I mean, most of the ones were covered. My memory. It's been a long time since I've played Final Fantasy 1.
Yeah, I've definitely played bits and pieces of one, but never like a legitimate playthrough.
Fair enough.
I mean, you should play Final Fantasy Origins. It's very good. It makes it playable for normal people that aren't David.
Or monsters.
The last three are very obscure, but or just maybe just well hidden in the game. So the my 11th one is David. Do you remember the item, the Pumice Stone? It's an equipable item for Dagger, and it gives her a summon. It teaches her a particular Eidolon. So it teaches her the Eidolon Arc. Do you remember what Eidolon that is, or what Arc is? I don't know if you ever used that or she learned it or not.
Yeah, I remember Arc from Final Fantasy VIII, but not Final Fantasy 1.
So in Final Fantasy VIII, what is Arc? Maybe it's the same in 9.
It's Guardian Force.
It's
like another.
What does
it's
it
like
look
an
like?
Eidolon. Looks like a boat.
Okay.
Or like a ship or something.
Right. Okay, yeah, you're on the right track. So it's similar in FF9. It is a ship. What kind of ships do we find in Final Fantasy games usually?
Airship or...
Airships,
yeah, airship.
Okay. So the Pumice Stone, apparently if you do the Japanese translation, the Japanese is float stone. And
the floater,
stone,
the floater that you get in Final Fantasy 1.
So the float stone is an item in Final Fantasy 1, at least in the Origins and the later editions. And in Final Fantasy 1 for NES, it's called a floater. And the floater item allows you to summon the airship in Final Fantasy 1. So that item that summons the Eidolon Arc, which is an airship, also is an item in Final Fantasy 1 that summons your airship that you get to use to travel in the world. So that's a cool one too, I thought. I've got two more here. Do you remember the city, a very early city in the game, Dali? I think Dali.
Dali.
That's where the mages are, right?
That's where they're producing them underneath the city. Do you remember anything about the inn in Dali?
The guy, there was a cat.
Yeah.
And then the guy was working with the people that were manufacturing. Okay. And he kept falling asleep.
And in the next room, what's in the next room that you enter after that? in the inn.
Is the fountain in there?
Nope. So this is tough, and it's not even an FF1 NES reference. It's more of a generic, maybe a little bit more generic Final Fantasy reference. The beds are arranged in the four corners of the room, as you see in later editions of Final Fantasy 1 and Final Fantasy 2 and 3 do this as well, where the beds are in the four corners and the characters kind of, when you go to the inn and they play a little scene,
they all merge in the middle.
So the characters all go together and then they merge, right? So there's that little thing there that happens in that particular inn. So that's not an NES Final Fantasy 1, but it does happen in other versions of the game. Final one, and a really good one, and this is very, very much a hidden Easter egg in the game. I think you can't find it till disc 4. I think it's Madain Sari, the I guess old Eidolon city, where you find Eiko. If you come back there during disc 4, I think you can get some extra information about Garnet or Dagger, and you can learn about her real family. So Dagger's real mother is named Jane, spelled Jane or Jayne. And that's a reference to the mother of Princess Sarah in Final Fantasy 1 in Cornelia. So the first castle in Final Fantasy 1, you're going to rescue Princess Sarah, and the mother, who you don't see in the throne room, she's off kind of in her own room crying about it, her name is Jane. So Dagger's mother is also Jane, and you learn in that city, in Madain Sari, in the Eidolon Wall, that Dagger's real name is also Sarah. So that's kind of a funny thing. So that her mother is Jane, just like the mother in Final Fantasy 1 of Princess Sarah, and Dagger or Garnet is also technically a Princess Sarah.
Yeah, I definitely did not go back to.
That's a really deep cut. Like you gotta kind of.
That is a very, very deep cut.
Like you're going back at the end of the game and you're basically like clicking on everything you can, just checking around. But yeah, I thought that was a cool one. So I mean, you got all the ones that I had, and you had the crystal one I didn't, and it's the three very obscure ones that were definitely easy to miss. So yeah.
I'll just quickly go over because I had a few from other ones too. Like
that's a good idea. Let's do that.
So for Final Fantasy IV references, there was Kane's Lance, which is the strongest weapon for Freya. That's found in the kind of the final run there at the end. The dwarves, I forgot that the city already there where Garnet and Zidane get married there. They say Lally. They keep saying Lally Ho, but then there's like Rally Ho from Final Fantasy IV. The ant lion that attacks Puck is in Final Fantasy IV. Zidane and Kuja really reminded me of like Cecil and Golbez, like similar like brother relationship.
Absolutely, yes.
And the other thing I noticed from that game was that the Magus sisters, there's a statue for them in Alexandria. So that was pretty neat. Not as many references to the other games. Like Final Fantasy VI, the only ones I really noticed were Mog.
Yep.
Or Moog. And that the gemstones were kind of similar to Magicite.
There's a character. There's a character somewhere named Locke. Someone keeps referring to Locke, and spelled the same way, Locke. I don't know who it is, or I don't really remember, but there is a character in Final Fantasy IX called Locke.
Okay.
Yep.
And then for Final Fantasy VII, I had the Tantalus Band was playing a song from there. In the Limbloom weapon shop, there's the Buster Sword, which is
that's right.
Zidane quips that I remember that guy with the spiky hair.
Yeah,
I remember that one.
Yeah, and then the last one I had, it was kind of a reference to 7 and 8.
Yes.
In the final, like they redo the play again. And he says, "No cloud or squall will hinder us."
I laughed out loud at that. It was so good.
Yeah. So that was a pretty obvious one there, but there might have been more. But those are the only ones I was able to catch. So. But yeah, it was pretty neat. I guess. Well, like when you have a guy like Sakaguchi doing the writing, then.
And it was also very intentional to make the game that kind of a throwback in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I don't really know if any of the games after this really celebrated the series in the way that 9 does.
I don't think so. Like, thinking back to like 10, 12, You could
Like,
argue that
I haven't
15 does
really-
like 15 does a lot of callbacks.
Yeah, because they do have the car that you can play the old music on and stuff.
Yeah,
Which is one of the three things that I like about Final Fantasy.
yeah, exactly.
Is
It's
that
been a
in
while
the
since I
Pocket
played
Edition?
it, but there's some no. Of course it's not. Nothing good's in the Pocket Edition.
Casey, you were warned about bringing that up.
If I ever play Final Fantasy 15, it's going to be Pocket Edition. But I don't plan on playing Final Fantasy 15, so.
I like.
Well,
I
you
like
know
that
what's funny
FF9.
is you like the action RPGs and you won't play Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah,
I like.
I mean, that's
the,
part of
the
my-
most action RPG.
I mean, my not to get on a little tangent here. My beef is also. I mean, this is the second to last traditional RPG in the series. Or no, I guess 13. At least the first 13 starts off as more turn-based. Right? Yeah. Wasn't, but
Yeah.
don't the later ones become more action-based? I've only played demos of the other two.
Well, 14's an MMO.
Well, no. I mean 13-2 and Lightning Returns. Are they still turn-based?
I don't know, but like 13 definitely is because they have like the class system, like the Sentinel and the Attacker.
I did like the combat is the best part of Final Fantasy 13. It's just that's the entire game.
Yeah, it's just one great big long hallway.
Yeah, until you get to like hour 40.
Yeah, and then
It's like, here's a cool city. Then the game's over
for 15 minutes.
I really appreciate that FF9 could have all these Easter eggs and throwbacks and like just not take itself so seriously. You know, it was really lighthearted and, you know, not so dour and dark. And even when bad things were happening, you kind of knew it was going to end. It was going to be okay. The characters were going to figure it out. And I really liked seeing all these callbacks to the series. You know, they were kind of moving on from the PlayStation and wrapping up. Maybe they were never going to come back to something so traditional like this ever again. It's almost a little bit of foresight, you know? No, they haven't. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that want them to. And I don't know. I doubt it'll ever happen. You know, now that's what the Bravely team is doing, and other and indie developers. You know, they're giving us maybe the Octopath team. Like it's going to fall on other shoulders to give us the traditional Final Fantasy experiences that a lot of fans still want. And you know, the main series is just going to keep experimenting, or they're going to remake 7, 8, 9, 6, and it's going to take 20 years to do, but. But you look at the remake of 7, and it's going away from turn-based. It seems a lot more dark. It seems a lot darker, grittier. Like
it's never happening.
No, and even if it does, I can't see it living up to the hype or living up to the standard. You know,
like
2014 maybe 13 or 14. Yeah.
Was it that long? Jesus, man. It's like I remember how hyped I was, and all the jokes like maybe you'll see it in 2020. And I'd be thankful if we saw it in 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the things that stood out for me with Final Fantasy IX as well was that the villains weren't all that villainous. Like I mean,
they weren't
just
that
kind of
intimidating,
sympathetic.
No, and they kept switching. Like Queen Braun was the villain for the first act, and then Kuja kind of took that over, and then they were kind of playing up Garland to be the big bad, but then he was disposed of so quickly that it's like Kuja was meant to be the bad guy, but I never felt hatred towards him, like to a certain extent. Like his actions seemed, I mean, it was all based on a fear of dying, so they seemed. I don't know if I want to say redeemable. Yeah, like understandable, I guess would probably be the better way that I would put it. Like he didn't seem necessarily like a truly evil character.
There's no urgency to him, right? Like he wasn't in a hurry to destroy everything. I felt like he was just so lackadaisical. Like it's almost the way he walks too. Like he's just kind of sashaying around and throwing his arms up, and you guys die now, and I'll get to it later, and I'll see you later. Like it's very much like he's not making things happening immediately. Like he's not like Kefka, where like, okay, poison the river, okay, separate the continents, like doing all these crazy things, but they're happening right now. We have to hurry and stop Kefka. I never felt like there's that hurry. We have to stop Kuja. Like it was more like, we'll get there when we get there, kind of thing.
It was like Xenoblade Torna. Go
yeah.
take care of other things. I'll be waiting.
Oh yeah. Let's not get started on that.
I mean, I guess the one thing you could say was that like he was taking his time because he was very methodical in his plan.
Mhm.
But yeah, like it never, like you said, you never felt like the world would end if you sat around.
No, I mean, one of the most impactful things he did was he destroyed Queen Braun and he destroyed the cities. But then the cities rebuilt themselves. Like there's no real lasting impact to the world. You know, at least we never got to that. And I think that was kind of missing. I thought it was such a good thing in Final Fantasy VI, where you go to the Dark World and that things have irreparably changed. There is no going back to the Light World. But in FF9, you know, they had that more fantasy, whimsical tone. I never felt like something could happen and we would never be able to go back. Like Alexandria rebuilt. Like it looked like Burmecia was going to rebuild. All these places that got destroyed, they were going to come back, right?
Before you even knew it, it was practically like, sure, there was just some rubble in the road, you know, but
yeah, it looked the exact same. Everyone's just out and about doing their day-to-day stuff. Like nothing has really changed. No one's like cowering in fear or hiding inside, like worried about Kuja and the end of the world. Like it was just business as usual.
And the other thing that I didn't remember way back when was that like the whole story was more linear than I remember it being.
Yeah.
I mean, it does. I mean, there's a few opportunities here and there to grind, out in the world, but exploration wise, there wasn't a whole lot. Like it really was a story focused adventure for the most part.
Yeah,
like I really didn't find myself going off the beaten path all that much.
I mean, you could, but it wasn't off the beaten path. It was just kind of closer to the areas where you already are. You know, there's other things to do in this city, or you can take Quina and go and catch the frogs if you want to. Like very kind of minor diversions. Like not, let's go to this, let's take the airship and go to this new land we've never been to before, and there'll be new stuff there. There wasn't really anything like that. You kind of explored every part of the world just in playing the game through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which, you know what? For me, I don't mind. You know, I don't mind a nice linear experience. Sort of like Jordan was saying before. It's nice to, like, all right, just gonna get in here, gonna be able to sort of chug through here and do what I got to do. You know. It's an older game. It's an older game, and we've all played it through, either to completion or to the halfway point or something. We all have experience with this game. So when a game that's 20 years old comes out today with very minor changes, I want to go through it again and kind of remember some stuff and enjoy, refresh my memory about the story. But I don't need to see everything again, and I don't need all these side quests and diversions and stuff. I do kind of want to just see how the story goes. And I actually, I liked the ending. I think some of the cutscenes were terrible. Like basically every cutscene with Zidane, I hated because I hate the way he looks in CG. But actually, some of the ones with the Eidolons were really good. Like when they blow up the castle and the shots with Bahamut were really cool.
Odin was a good one.
Odin was really good.
Man. I thought the coolest to me was when Alexander gets summoned and just
that was
how
awesome.
Epic it looked around the big castle and city and everything. That was probably one of my favorite moments throughout the game.
Yeah. Like I didn't skip any of the cutscenes because I there's some characters that look kind of goofy and I didn't really want to see them, but I think for the most part the cutscenes were pretty well done. And I imagine like playing that game the first time in 2000 or when it first released, like being blown away by the quality of those. Like they're really well done.
Oh yeah, I mean I was still impressed by some of these videos. Or cutscenes. Like I could only imagine if back in 2000 to be like your mind would be blown.
Yeah, you'd want to like call everyone over like, hey, look at this video. Like this is awesome. Like this is happening in a PlayStation 1 video game. Like that's definitely blowing the minds of younger RPG fans at the time for sure.
I mean that's what Final Fantasy VII did to me back in the day.
Yeah.
And just circling back to when Zidane, like his character, there was no event, like we were saying, there was no like singular event that I feel like things had changed. But I think where I noticed that they were making it obvious that he was becoming that hero character was, I think it was with his interactions with Aramont, where Aramont was kind of looking at him like trying to figure him out, and then all of a sudden, like when he was being watched, it seemed like that's when the good deeds were happening. So I mean that's when it seemed noticeable to me was I think there was like the war where he could have killed Aramont, and he's like, I'm asking like, why didn't you kill me? And he's like, well, I didn't need to.
Yeah.
So for character groups, what I mean, a lot of the game you really don't get to choose who you're fighting as, but at the end when you actually do get your party, what was the go-to choices?
I mean, for me, like Zidane, I guess, Vivi was always in there. I liked Freya a lot, and then then you sort of keep Garnet or Dagger in there for them heals and stuff. I did like, Steiner was weird. Like I wanted to try and keep him in there sometimes, but I don't know. I just like Freya better.
Yeah, so, Steiner worked better if you had Vivi with you too. So
I found that I kind of just went with who were my strongest guys at a given point, and I just rode with them the way through. So Zidane and Steiner were hitting the hardest for me, with their physical attack, so I kept them in. I wanted Vivi for obviously to have some magic in case I ran into someone who was resistant to physical attacks. Although you don't really very often you didn't run into a lot of challenging enemy encounters where they would be resistant to stuff. And then Garnet for the heals I had because I had her longer, so I had more of her abilities had been learned by that time. So
I
didn't switch to Eco. I mean, it's funny because they're basically the same character, right? They're both white mage summoners, so you kind of choose one or the other. And yeah, if I ever played the game again, I'd probably do something different. But yeah, Garnet or Dagger was good enough for me.
I went the non-traditionalist route and powered up Kina.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow!
Got those blue magic spells.
I like was eating everything.
Yeah.
So Kina had quite a treasure trove of spells to use at the end, and it actually helped with because like they had a few of those blue attacks were pretty powerful. Like I would use the earthquake quite often, but it also worked out that like using White Wind, it was like I had a second healer.
Yeah, that's useful.
Auto life, and so yeah, they just had a lot of useful.
Sounds like some nice versatility.
Yeah,
like blue mages always in Final Fantasy games are kind of like hard to work with, but if you learn it, then
you got to put in your time.
Like that's what like Final Fantasy V when I played through that like a year or two ago. The blue magic in that is so potent if you put the time into it.
When you play without the turbo and all the other crap, like I did, I had the time to do the eating.
When you played it the right way, dang it.
That's right.
What I didn't like about that, David, though, yeah, I get you have more time there, but you still don't know exactly when you can eat it. Like, it has to be, under 25% health or something like that? I wish there was some indication, or you could find out, like, I don't know if you could check the HP of the monsters by scanning them or something like that, but yeah, it felt like it was just a crapshoot, you know? Yeah, you just kind of randomly eat them, and hopefully they're weak enough to be devoured, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's why you need your strategy guide that just references a bunch of stuff online.
Exactly. Yeah, I've just never been a fan of blue mages in general. I find it kind of tedious to get all the spells. I get they can be really powerful, but then the added it's not even just like get hit with the ability or just enter a battle. Was you have to get them down it's like catching Pokemon or something. Get them down to like the red bar and then you can eat them and take the ability. That was just too many steps for me, so I didn't really use that character.
There's a few frustrating moments too when because I mean not everything gives you something. So
yeah,
often I'd be like, oh, that tasted bad, and I'm like, spent all that time.
Yeah, what a waste. Of course, later in the game, you're forced to use Zidane and Quina, right? Like you do have to kind of balance the levels of the party a little bit because there are situations where you are forced to use certain characters. So you could get a little bit screwed if you didn't level up at least 6 of them or so.
Yeah, I was worried about that fiend battle going in, but I ended up mopping the floor with them because I had built up Kina so powerfully. So it was a pretty quick and
I was the other way around. My Zidane was really strong, so I killed him like five basic attacks or something like that, and I think Quina died really early. I'm like, well, I don't really care about you, so it's okay.
I got lucky in a few fights too, where I just happened to have a trance kick in during certain like hard battles or some of the boss fights. So
that's almost what the trance is. It's just a luck thing. Like you're not building up like the limit breaks in FF7, which were perfect. Like, oh, I know a boss battle's coming up. I'll just fight a few randoms and get my limit breaks up, and then you hold on to the limit breaks.
No.
Like if you could hold on to trance, that would have made so much sense. Like it's stupid that it takes forever to build up, and then when it does go off, you could be fighting like some no-name baddies, and then you lose it, right? Like that's so stupid.
You can get it on like the final turn.
Like,
which is pointless.
Yeah, I've already selected my other attacks. You know, whoever gets hit goes into trance. The other person finishes their attack and end of battle. And you're like,
that's right. Yeah,
so stupid, man.
Yeah. Just
well,
not
a lot of
very
times,
well
a lot of times I found that I would get hit, but I had already chosen what I was going to do. So it'd be like, oh, I just used a potion. Oh, there goes one of my trance moves.
Yeah. It's so dumb. I don't know.
Very frustrating.
Trance sucks, man.
I think like not to pump the tires of Final Fantasy VIII any more than I have, but I liked how the trance extra powers come in when you're down at low health, because to me that makes sense, because it's like okay, you're about to die, we'll give you like this extra boost
last ditch
for this last ditch, and maybe that's just enough to get you across the finish line.
That makes
better.
sense. That makes a ton of sense. Like I don't even care what they are, just activating at that time is reasonable. But trance going off at any random time and the meter going up so slowly and so incrementally, it's asinine. I don't know. I would rather not have them at all. It was just a waste.
Yeah.
I do like Vivi's design when he's in trance is great.
Yeah. I love.
Like
I do like how they
cool.
change. I like how they change appearance. That's the only thing I like about the trance is that they look different, and so you get to see. Very rarely we get to see a different side of them, kind of thing.
But I'd rather have them be limit breaks, which are a better implementation.
Don't worry, we'll get that
potentially
in a month's time.
A better game.
Yes.
We'll get that in a month's time too.
We'll soon find out. Yeah.
Does anybody have any final thoughts about story characters before we move on to
one little story I wanted to share was that there's this thing in RPGs where like I'm really satisfied by fighting a boss character and like everyone's dead. I can't heal them. Like I've got one more attack left, and if it doesn't kill the boss, I'm gonna get wiped. I'm gonna have to restart. And so I had that happen on the final boss of this game, where all my characters were dead. Zidane was down to like 100 health. I think I was at 1,000. I'm like, oh, okay, it's probably gonna be over. I got hit for like 900 something. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is my last attack. If this doesn't kill him, then I'm going to die here. And so I had one of those moments where the final attack that Zidane landed, it wasn't a critical hit or anything like that, but it was enough to knock out the boss. And it does the animation kind of freezes, and you've won. It's not as satisfying as like the lightning flashes that kind of happen in other games, but the animation stopped, and I knew I'd beaten the boss, and it was that last ditch, that final attack that did it. And man, I live for that moment in role-playing games, especially turn-based ones, where you know that this is your last chance. Like if you hit them on this, you win. If you don't, you lose, and maybe you're going to lose a bunch of progress or lose all this time you put into the battle. So I was really happy that it happened on the absolute final boss of the game, which is basically the perfect moment for that. It's the perfect moment for that to happen, right? Because now I don't. It's do or die at the end of the game, the perfect moment. So I was really happy about that.
Bottom ninth.
Yeah,
that happened to me.
Pretty much.
In the first battle, I can't remember what it was called. It had a funny name, but there's like the 3 black wizardy mage things.
Oh yeah.
The black waltzes.
Yeah, the waltzes. On the first waltz, when it's only Zidane.
Oh yes.
I was not prepared for that first battle, so it was not going well. And like you said, I was down to the very final. Like he had hit me, I probably had like 10 hit power left, but it put me into trance.
Oh,
And
yeah, of course
yeah.
it did.
And so I was able to
The
sneak
one
in.
time it actually works.
Yeah,
That's
awesome.
right. It was the
A broken clock is right twice a day.
Indeed.
it was the first waltz that got me past that.
Yeah. Speaking of these near-death situations, there is one more element of the port. I don't think this is in the original. I might be wrong about that. The continue option, is that in the original game?
I don't remember. That came up for me too,
there's
and I just wasn't
game,
sure.
So there's three options when you die: new game, load game, or continue. And continue apparently takes you back to the last room that you exited, or the last area that you entered.
I
so
had
it's
to
not
restart too many times because of that.
Yeah, it's not necessarily like right before the battle, although sometimes it is. If you just entered a new area and then fight a battle and die, you'll go right back before it. In fact, you'll go right back immediately before it, where you can't even like equip new items or use potions or anything. You go right into the dialogue with the fucking boss. It's insane.
Yeah.
So
the boss
I would
battles...
say that seems like something that they added in the port because it's that preposterously dumb.
No,
It
I
is.
don't know. I feel like it was in the first one though.
It might have been.
Because I feel like that waltz, that I could be
I
wrong,
just
but
honestly don't remember.
I thought the waltz, like the first time I played 9, I had the same problem with that first waltz with Zidane, and it kept just putting me back in with the boss, and it just was driving me nuts. And
yeah, it could be.
And
Maybe
I'd
it's
have to
Achilles-
load back
Achilles' heel.
to. I know that first waltz, like, is probably the hardest part in the whole game.
You either get trance or you don't, David. I mean, that's it.
That's right. So you have to load back and like fight other people until I was right at the trance.
Yeah, so that continue option is just, it's funny. Like, sometimes it's going to work out and it's going to put you back in a good situation where you can heal up, or you can, again, change your equipment or something like that, change your summons. But other times it warps you back to like a city you visited previously, because that was the last time you entered a building, or it puts you right back in the dialogue with the boss you're going to fight, and it's just useless that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a funny option that doesn't seem really thought out. Whether it's part of the port or the original game, it doesn't seem to really fit.
All right, so I know. So back in October, we had our Final Fantasy overview of the franchise. Scheduling wise, we weren't able to get Neil in, so he did not have a chance to provide his Final Fantasy top mainline list, and we figured this is a great time for him to give us the list and to let us know if Final Fantasy IX changed in that order.
So I guess I'll start with the back 6. 13 is, as I said earlier on this pod, the factually worst Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy 2. My number 12 is Final Fantasy X, which I really hate a lot. 11 is Final Fantasy 3, which introduces a neat job system, but I think is rough around the edges. Even in the pretty solid DS port, I still don't enjoy that game as much. 5 did it better. Number 10 is 15, Pocket Edition only. Number 9 is 13. The battle system's real good. Number 8 is more because I haven't played it that much. I will be changing that in a month and a half. Final Fantasy 12 is number 8. And then this is where some changes happened. I think if I were to have done this back in October, I think my 765 probably would have been 189. Right now, my number 7 is Final Fantasy 9. If there's one thing that our little Final Fantasy 1 references game did was remind me that I really like that Final Fantasy Origins version of Final Fantasy 1 a lot. That's my number 6. My number 5 is Final Fantasy 8. Then my number 4 is Final Fantasy 4, coincidentally. My number 3 is Final Fantasy 7, which is ripe to... I think it can only drop from here. Number 2 is Final Fantasy 5, which is the best Final Fantasy game that people haven't played. And number 1 is Final Fantasy 6, because that's the best Final Fantasy.
Because that's the right answer.
Yeah. Like much like 2 is factually the worst, I think 6 is... Well, I mean, 6 is the best of the old style. And I mean, there's a reason why, 10 and 13 and 15 are all lower on my list. I revisited 10 when it came out on Vita about a year or so after that, and really didn't enjoy myself at all. I think the voice acting's bad. I think it's one of those games that kind of is like set to dazzle you, but it dazzled you in 2001. It doesn't really work. to dazzle you anymore because it's real old. Spectacle in early 3D games is something that goes away real quick.
You didn't enjoy playing Blitzball?
I was just gonna say.
Oh my goodness.
Blitzball is pretty ridiculous. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I'm looking forward to playing it again.
Yeah, that is the one I will avoid in this the Switch re-release March. I'm looking forward to replaying 7. Although I do have, after replaying 9, I wonder if a lot of my issues with 9 are going to show up in 7 again. I think I have more affinity for that game, so I think I might be able to push through it more. And I'm curious to see how I feel about 12, because 12 is definitely a game that could move up, although I've heard that's got some kind of weird action RPG, like a novel and unique battle system that I don't know if I'll click with or not.
Yeah, and the end of the random encounters, like you see everything on the overworld now.
Yeah.
The Switch edition, I wish I had written them down because I don't remember them all, but there was a trailer that just came out. It seems like there's a lot of additions for this game.
I mean, it was a bigger remaster than 9. It was the Zodiac edition.
Yeah.
Which I'm trying to see if I can. Yeah, so the Zodiac Age, it's got there's a Japanese only international Zodiac job system that came out on PlayStation 2.
Oh, right, and the job system, you can actually change the jobs.
Yes.
Yeah, in the Switch version, in the PS4 version, you were able to do 2 jobs. That's the Zodiac Age thing. But now in the Switch version, I believe you can switch those jobs as well. So each character can have 2 jobs, but now you can switch those. It used to be before you locked into a job and you couldn't get out, I think. But now in the Switch version, you'll be able to switch freely and it just make each character whoever you want it to be. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward. I'm completely intend to play all 3 of the ones that are coming out on Switch, and hope that
Hold on, David. All 3 or all 4? Oh, you played FF9. Okay, so you mean you're going to play 10 and 12, eh?
Yeah, I'm going to play 7, 10, 12.
Okay.
What about 10-2? 10-2, the better version of 10.
I mean, he's got to play every Final Fantasy that comes out on the Nintendo Switch, right? That's
10-2 is coming out on Switch. Just
there you go.
10-2.
Then he's playing it.
I'll start 10-2. I did like.
You sound
I did
so
not
unhappy.
like it.
I think. I mean, 10-2. It's a better system than in 10. It's just it's dress spheres, and you're dressing up characters to be pop idols as opposed to like sad blonde boy.
Oh man, if I review 10-2, I might have cool. We might have the lone review on the internet for that one.
You mean when you do?
Although looking at Final Fantasy XII's Wikipedia page, what we should do is after 12 we should go back and check out Revenant Wings, which is like I believe it's a turn-based strategy game.
Oh yeah, I had that on the DS.
DS.
Yeah,
right?
that was a DS game.
Is it a sequel
or
or
real
prequel
time
or something? I have no idea.
It is a sequel.
It
I
is
believe.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see. Like, I'm curious if we'll see anything else get ported. Like, will we see Final Fantasy 1 come to like the Nintendo Online, or will we see Origins ported from its original PS1?
Give me Origins, please.
Yes, I would. Yeah, I'd love to have Origins, even though it holds your hand a lot more than the original.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I have brute forced and played a lot of I don't know if I ever beat the original NES game, but I definitely had it when I was younger. It's just a hard game to revisit, especially in the NES Classic. Like, I will acquiesce that Final Fantasy 1 on the NES in its day was amazing. Its day was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's why I think Origins is so great, because I think I don't think Origins holds your hand as much. I think it just gives you enough of a poke in the right direction to make it a little more modern.
Palatable. A little more palatable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any final thoughts before we put a bow on our Final Fantasy IX port to Switch?
I don't know where 9 ended up in my rankings, but I feel like I would probably move it higher today. And again, mostly just because I found the game a lot more accessible with the Switch port than I did with when I was playing it on PSN. Like that, it was slow. I think the load times were worse. I didn't have as many options with it, and yeah, it was really just nice to. I played the whole game in handheld mode, and I love playing these. Going back to these older RPGs and playing them portably when the originals were all on home consoles. Like I think that's just such it's such a great way to experience them when you can put them down, and the sleep mode with the Switch again with these longer games is perfect. I had fun with this game. I looked forward every time to jumping back into it if I took a break for a day or two. It's made me more excited for 7 because I just have more fondness for 7, and there's a lot more smaller things in 7 that I've never done before. Like I don't know if I ever finished 9. I don't think I ever did. This is probably the first time, and I enjoyed it. I don't think it's super great. I think it's a good game. But I know 7 is a really good game that I enjoy. I beat it. I beat it on PS3. I beat it on PC. Ironically, I never really played it much on PS1, but I'm looking forward to the Switch port of PS4, and hopefully it has some. It sounds like it's the PS4 version, right? And that seems to be a pretty decent port. So, does it have the same speed up and turn off random encounter stuff? I think it does, right?
As far as I know, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm all about that right now. So I can't wait for that. And that'll be a great episode, too, because I think collectively we all have a lot more fondness for that game. So we'll see if that remains after going through it again. I mean, it has been years for some of us since we touched that game. So, yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, I think looking at 9, it had been so long, and my Final Fantasy knowledge or experience is pretty shoddy throughout the whole series. Like, I've played a bunch of them, but I haven't beaten really many or any. I'm 9, like I said, I got up to the very end originally, and I'm enjoying my playthrough again, though. It's been a long time, so a lot of it's fresh, but it has its flaws, especially this port. Things that are weird. That, like I said, trance is sort of the worst thing ever. It's just so frustrating. But overall, it's like I've enjoyed the characters and the sort of like you guys were saying before, the lightheartedness of it all. Like, sure, there's this big pressing matter, but it's not necessarily that pressing, or at least to the characters involved. So it's nice to sort of go through there and check out the cool different cities and whatnot. I'm gonna, like I said, I still plan on wrapping it up over probably. At this pace, I'm probably not going to rush it, but get it done before 7 and then roll right into 7, and I think that's going to be a super good time.
Yeah, I think I just want to play through Final Fantasy 7 again before taking another look at my list, just to get another PS1 game under my belt, because it's been a long time since I played 7, since the original. Like, I only played it, I beat it once on, I've beaten it once on PS1, and then I started it a couple times but didn't get very far. So this will be another full playthrough for me. And I just want to kind of gauge my attitude towards the PS1 type game in general. Because like you said, a few of those things are you can kind of feel when you're playing a PS1 game. And again for 7, I don't think I'm going to try to play Au Naturel again, time permitting. But I'll get that one done, and then I'll take another look at my list and see if my fondness of the PS1 era has changed at all in my older age.
Oh, and then maybe 8 won't be so beloved.
Ooh.
Yeah. Except I won't have played 8, so my the legend will be able to. It was almost like Square was like, we don't want to ruin 8, so we're just not going to port it.
It was a masterpiece as it was, so we'll leave it be.
That's right.
They were specifically thinking of David Lloyd during those meetings when they're like, "Oh, which one should we bring to Switch? No, 8's perfect the way it is. Let's just leave it.
We don't want to ruin it.
Let's leave it in the past."
We don't want to piss off that guy.
That's right.
Alrighty. Well, that's I guess that's puts a wrap on Final Fantasy 9. Gets us ready for a whole lot more Final Fantasy. And I guess in between we're going to try to sneak in a Xenogears episode.
You monsters.
And
I hope.
Well, I mean, continuing the theme of PlayStation 1 RPGs, right? We're basically playing 3 in a row here.
Well, the plan is, I guess, to continue playing them until we physically throw up from playing them, I guess.
Nintendo PlayStation Report.
Hey, it's
I
on
mean, hey,
Nintendo
these games are coming on Nintendo consoles. Who knows? Maybe we're just getting ahead of. I mean, and that's why Xenogears is important because it informs Xenoblade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and who knows? Xenogears could be a future port on the Switch. Everything else is being ported. Why not that one?
I wouldn't get optimistic.
No.
First, Square would need a reason to actually revisit it, and I don't know if anything other than a PlayStation 1 re-release on a Sony platform will be that.
They probably lost the code for it anyway.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, for anyone who's looking for the review for Final Fantasy IX, Brian's got a great one up on NintendoWorldReport.com if you want to take a read. Goes over some of the stuff that we touched on, and we've got a couple videos up as well. There's a video that just shows kind of the comparisons between the Switch version and the original CD has been played on a PS2 Slim. So it does appear a little bit darker because of the emulation, but it kind of gives you an idea of the differences in the quality and the detail. And we also got I did just a little history of the Final Fantasy IX. Not a whole lot different from what we discussed today, but just again to give you a little bit of a contrast between the look of the original and the port. So, and for a bunch of other RPGs, we got all check out the reviews on NintendoWorldReport.com as well. And make sure to hit us up on Twitter at the Nintendo_NWR for the Nintendo World Report. And then for the Thirsty Mage, it's just at the Thirsty Mage. So if there's any comments, concerns, any games that you'd like us to cover, feel free to hit us up and at either the website or the Twitter. And we'll be happy to respond and hopefully acquiesce to any games that you think deserve a long and couple-hour discussion about.
Except for Final Fantasy 2 and Final Fantasy 13.
And Final Fantasy 8.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would play 13 again. I just to see if it's as bad as I remember. I would put myself through the torture.
I wonder, I mean, I think wasn't there a rumor of that happening? Of there being like a 13 trilogy on newer consoles or something? I don't know. I don't know if I care enough.
I feel like
to
there
know.
was a 13. There was something to do with 13. I don't know if if they just brought it to PS4 or something. I felt like there was something going on with 13, but I'd have to look in to see what exactly it was. Maybe it's just the Lightning Returns disc that still sits in my drawer in plastic to this day.
Which I've heard is like the best of the three.
Yeah, I guess if I took it out of the plastic to try it, I'd find out.
When I saw some news about Final Fantasy 13, I think, maybe they're going to bring the trilogy to Nintendo consoles or something like that. And it turned out it was just like a fashion announcement. Like Lightning's going to be modeling clothes for some Japanese clothing company. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's definitely Lightning marketing or something like that.
I remember that.
You remember that, right? There's some crossover.
Yeah, I remember that. She was the character. Lightning, the character, was modeling like real life clothes for a fashion company.
It's so weird.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
you remember
and
that,
I think
right?
There was also, I think there was something that happened where it just turned out it was coming onto Xbox One backwards compatibility.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah,
that's probably it too.
I guess if I want to try it again, I'll have to break out the PS3. All right. Well, I want to thank you gentlemen for joining me with the Final Fantasy Talk.
A pleasure as always.
And
anytime.
Perfect. And thank everyone for listening. And we will be back soon with another likely PS1 RPG.
Yep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
See ya.
Alone for a while, I've been searching through the dark for traces of the love you left inside my lonely heart. To